Hello, John.
Hello. Try not to laugh for some reason. I love it.
Yeah. Well, this has been so much fun for me. And I so love this topic. And I so love creating with you. And once again, like I said, like this was kind of your title.
Mhm.
So thank you for the humor in the title that you've
Oh,
created
yes.
for us.
Well, everyone secretly wants a big ask.
Everybody, well, unless you already have a big ask.
Is your ask big enough? Mhm.
Yes. Oh, make my face hurt. So hello, everyone. Welcome. If you've been in here before, if you've watched day one, awesome. If you have any questions, let us know. And here we go on day two. So this is day two of 3 days of creating your big ask future. And so day one was getting clear, like really getting clear. And here we are with day two, and it's the demand now, the demand of you, right? Right, John?
Mhm. We
So,
weren't talking about this about my own personal life today or Becky's.
no,
We
we
aren't
weren't.
doing that thing where we pick the topic and then now in our life it's showing up. Oh,
Totally.
wait, we are.
Yeah. Heck yeah. We're actually, this is contributing to our lives, and we are just inviting you to the journey that we are, one, getting super clear on what we'd like to create in our lives. Two, now today, we're making the fucking demand. And if you've ever heard of this, it's like, so you can make a demand of you. But if you make a demand of other people, like when you demand other people to do things, like how does that work for you?
Think about it this way. If someone makes a demand of you, do you fulfill it or do you fight them? So why would you demand of someone else?
Yeah. Or you just say, I'm going to do the opposite of what you just told me to do.
Right. I'm going to show you. I'll show you what it really is. And usually with this, there's two things that go together. There's request and there's demand. Demand is what you do for you. Yes. Request is what you do of others and of the universe.
Yeah.
So you can only make a demand of you. And so with this one, that's what we really want to look at is like, what is your demand of you? And what are some of the elements that go into creating and actualizing with having a demand?
Demand. Yeah. Yeah. Because, well, before, like, because we actually were looking at this and I was like, John, is number one making the demand of you and then getting clear. And we really looked at this and was like, oh gosh, like you can't make a demand of you. If like, what are you demanding? Right. if you know, like, what would you like to generate and create in your life? And so this is kind of like the piece a lot of, I think people get confused with too, is it's like, I'm changing this. All right, well, what are you changing? Like, what are you asking for? Like, what would you like to have? So that's why day one was like really getting clear and then making the demand. And so with that, we have like, so, like really creating your reality requires you to really create from your reality, not somebody else's. And we did talk about that yesterday, right? That's really like getting clear. So, and if you're not trying to make yourself fit into this reality, by seeing what really works for everybody else.
Yeah.
But if you're like, okay, I want to have something different, like, how do I do this? And so we really looked at that, and there's like 5 elements to break it down.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the first one, John?
So first one is to make a demand of yourself. Yeah. And we kind of talked about this a bit yesterday. Becky reminded me of a line I said because I was complaining about my own life. And she goes, well, you did say that, anything you actually desire to create, you will. And I was like, okay, good point. But with demand, so demand is actually knowing that no matter what it takes, you're going to change something. So if
Yes.
you're looking at, I want to do something different, this isn't working. The demand is, I will do whatever it takes to change this. That's demand.
It's that like never give up, never give in, never quit. Like you're like, I am having this, even though you don't have like at this point. John was just talking about like he'd like to be a 3-day body facilitator. And you're like, oh, that's a lot. I don't even know. But it's like, all right, well, what if you didn't worry about the steps that had to take, or like the whole the everything, that people look at or project from other people's realities, but you're like, okay, I'm having this. No matter what it takes, no matter, like what I have to be, no matter what I have to lose, no matter no matter what I think about myself.
Yeah. No matter what your point of view is. And that's become the thing for me that I looked at specifically with being 3D body facilitator, or what's the point.
And if you don't know what that is, like what we're talking about is access consciousness has a few different classes. And John and I are both access consciousness facilitators. So there's a few classes that you can facilitate as a facilitator. And then once, there's other classes you can take, they're body classes, and they're wonderful for your body. And him and I both have taken many classes. We enjoy them, but there's like this certain criteria that you have to meet to actually be able to facilitate that class. And it's a lot.
And it is exactly what we're talking about. To be willing to be a 3D body facilitator is a very big demand of yourself and a demand to know bodies. And that's where like I'm starting to develop that piece.
Well, do you have to know bodies?
Well, that's a different.
Well,
there are people who I would say who probably can do it and not know bodies, but it would probably be way more enjoyable if you do.
Yeah, but let's look at this. So we're talking about one piece here. We just talked about something we facilitate. But John, you also have all these other, say, like labels behind your name. Like you went and you were an actual high school teacher at one point. You had to go to school. You had to have all these degrees to be able to be hired to do that. And for a lot of people, they'd be like, wow, I really would like to maybe be a teacher and in high school or grade school or whatever it is. And like, that's a really cool job for me. But now I don't want to do all that because it's going to take a lot.
Pretty much.
But you did it.
I did it. And it's funny because you're bringing this up too, because I did that and I didn't like it. So then guess what I did? I went, all right, this is exactly what we're talking about too. All right, this isn't working. This isn't what I want. This isn't what I desire and require any longer. And so I'm going to do something different. I didn't know what it was at first. And it kind of like, if I actually look at this now too, the next thing I did was ask a question, which is actually the second element of this.
Yeah.
And the question that we often use is, what choice do I have here? Like what's actually available? Which is exactly what I did. I started looking at, okay, teaching isn't fun anymore. I'm not enjoying it. I want to do something different. Something else is required here. What I asked myself is, what did I get into teaching for? What was I actually aware of? What did I actually want to create with it? So then I get clear on what it is I wanted to create. And then went, oh, I actually want to contribute to these kids, like creating a future, having a life. And then lo and behold, later, I get all these different things that start showing up, which would be the next element. I'm going through these rather quickly, but I'm sure we'll break them down again. And the next one is choice. And so with choice, it's if I choose this, what's it going to create? So for me, it was, all right, so I don't want to do this anymore. What would I like to do? What did I get into it for? Getting clear. What was it's actually my agenda. Getting clear on what my agenda was for teaching to actually contribute to kids having a future. So there's my agenda. So now asking what's going to expand that? What's going to actually start to create that agenda further? Then I get emails that are about a school psychology program and being a school psychologist.
Mm.
So what comes from this are possibilities. That's the next element. So all these things start showing up. I started exploring what are the infinite possibilities here? What are other things I could do that will actually, contribute to the agenda I have of creating more for these kids? And then I land on becoming, getting my degree, my master's degree, and being a counselor and being a therapist. At the same time, as I'm doing master's degree and getting my license to do therapy, I also was working to get my license to be an Access Consciousness certified facilitator. Both of those things expand my agenda of creating a future now, not just for kids, but for people, for the world. So
But
from,
what I want to
yeah,
do, because you just talked about 1, 2, 3, but I kind of want to back it up, because if we're talking about demand, and how many of you have looked at what, like, you make a demand in your world to have something different? Like, okay, so we're talking about being a teacher, we're talking about being a counselor, maybe if you know what access consciousness is, that you know what it takes to be a facilitator, which there's all these like things, just like school, like all these classes that you take to get,
prerequisites.
yeah, prerequisites that you get to a certain point. But what I find fascinating, John, is for you, like you have your master's.
Uh-huh.
And so if I went and looked at, well, I want to go to school today to get my master's, I'd be like, wow, that's a lot. So where is it that we always look at like the in between of like what it takes to get where we want to go, then that stops us?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is funny because even when you say, if I went like to get a master's, I would go, wow, that's a lot of work. And for me, I'm like, it really wasn't. It was like 3 years.
Well,
But then, and we're talking about what are the different things. And so now for me, I'm looking at this thing. We were talking about the 3-day body facilitator thing and me going, that's a whole lot of stuff. Why, like for me, why is that any different than getting a master's degree? Like, what's
like,
the difference between the two? The demand of me.
and you're very, very close to having your doctorate in school.
Oh yeah, I'd have like 3 more years. I'd have a doctorate.
But you're
Three
very
more
close
years and some research.
in some research to being Dr. John. But when we look at where we're not willing, it's funny because this is the piece that we're looking at. Because if we're talking about creating your big ass future, the things that really stop us are like are they even relevant? Are they even ours? Because when you're just like, okay, this is next, I'm making the demand, hey, I'll have that, and then it like because that's a lot to have your doctorate. For normal people are like, hey, I'm going back to school and I'm going to get my doctorate. Like there would be like lists and lists and lists of like prereq classes that you would have to take. Or, let's look at another example. If you want to create a business and you're like, I want to be $1 million company, $1 billion company. Well, but there's all of this in between to get to this. So I think a lot of people, what stops them is like, well, I want to go from here to here. And I don't want to do any of this. But what happens actually is it's like, they don't know where to start. They don't know how it becomes overwhelming. But when you make a demand, don't you find that like all of this doesn't really seem to matter because you take one step at a time. You take one step and then it's another step and then it's another step. So I'd love to ask you again, like what demand did you make to have your master's degree versus, oh, like, hey, I don't want to be like, I can't be a 3D body facilitator because it's too
Yeah.
much.
Well, and it's funny too, because every time when I'm looking at it, the thing that stops it is not the actual list of things that you have to do. Like when I really get present, look at it, it's a point of view.
So,
That's it.
okay, so
I
our
have
point of
some point of
view,
view, whatever it is.
there we
And that
go.
point of view limits the demand. So it's like, what? And actually, that's a lie. I just lied. I just lied to all of you. I'm a bad person. Because I said the point of view limits your demand. But no, it doesn't. Because in demand, your point of view would be irrelevant because it's whatever it takes, which includes getting over your point of view, getting over
So
yourself.
if you're on here and you're creating, you're like, okay, guys, I hear you chatting, but I want to create my big ass future. How many lies have you bought that you can't? Period. That's truly really it. Like, because how many lies have you bought that you can't? That you
And are
can't
those
have this, you're not good enough, it won't be easy. It's like your parents are like, you're crazy, like you can't. When I first created my one business, my parents are like, oh gosh, me and my husband end up having a vacation rental business before Airbnb here in Florida was even a thing. Like, so what, but they were like, you don't want to be too big. What are you guys doing? They had no idea. Like they couldn't even comprehend like what was taking place. Well, the thing is that when we created this business, it just grew and grew and grew because it was one, we had a demand in our world and we didn't really stop to think about it, but things just fell into place. It was one thing after another. At one point we had 50 homes and then we bought a hotel.
Mhm.
And everybody around us was like, what the fuck are you guys doing? You're going to lose it all. Don't get too big. Don't get too stressed. I don't know what you guys are doing. I don't understand it. And so how much is it really the lies that you buy that you can't from other people? Because when you have a demand, it's really, there's no thinking involved. It's just what's next? What's next? So even if
and
we, yeah.
and again, the next element in this too that's coming up again is question. Like, okay, with all of that too, with the lies, it's like, all right, so what's next? That's a great question. What next?
Mhm.
Where am I lying to myself is a question.
Yeah.
Uh, who can I talk to? Where do I need to go?
Yeah.
What do I need to do? What do I need to look at? What needs my attention today? All those questions are the next step. So if you have that demand, you're like, all right, I'm doing it no matter what. The next thing is the question of and the question is one of those things that I like to use a lot. And I don't feel like enough people talk about what a true question is, because a true question doesn't have an answer and it
Yes.
doesn't have an assumption to it. It's not, oh,
Well,
I need this money, so I need to call the bank. That is not a question. Or
well,
I need money, should I call a bank? That's the assumption that money only comes from banks, rather than, all right, I need this amount of money for a loan.
yeah.
Where can the money come from?
Yeah.
And then it's
And a
making random phone
question
calls and talking and
really
whatever.
is opening up yourself to miraculousness beyond this reality. It's not going to a conclusion of like, oh gosh, I can only have a business. How many of you have like wanted to start a business or do something different? And you're like, well, I don't have an LLC. I don't even know how to work computers. I can't do this. And so, but when you're like, what's next? It opens up for you to the possibility of one, like the universe contributing to you information and doing some research too. Like there's always something so powerful about like what is next, like what are all my possibilities and what is beyond this reality available for me that I have never known. Because I'm not sure about all of you guys that are listening to this or like you, John, but like how many of you have made millions of dollars or billions of dollars or had LLCs or had companies? And so you don't have the information, but when you start asking, you open up to the information that has never been available to you.
Well, and the information that you won't actually allow yourself to have, as long as you're buying the lie that you can't do it.
Yeah.
Because guess what? If you can't do it, you also can't know it. Which is what we kind of talked about yesterday too, is, actually getting to the place of knowing what you know. As long as you have a lie in place or a point of view in place, you can't actually know what you know. So you can't actually function from possibility.
Mm. Mm. That's amazing.
Mic drop, run away.
Well, and so I wonder even like what kind of home play can we get for people? So like what kind of demand can you make for yourself today? And like, so I'm also kind of aware of people on here like, do you even know what that is? Because have you ever made a demand of you?
Hmm.
And I can like give like a little quick story of me that I know is one of our businesses that we had. My husband was, we've made millions and then lost millions and just done these different things in our life. And I remember at one point I was just like driving, and I was like, I have no idea. And I was crying. And my husband was just really like at a very low place from like losing businesses. And he's just kind of like, oh. And I was driving and I was like, show me. I don't know, like what do I even know? Like like at that point, like I only when I was younger worked at a restaurant as a bartender, managed a restaurant, and I was like, I have 3 kids now. I don't know what I know. I could go back to bartending, like in this reality that would have been a solution of doing something that I know. But I was like, who can I talk to? I'm driving, and I was just like, all right, whatever it takes, I'm changing this. I'm doing this. Who can I talk to? Where can I go? Bring the person in my life. What can I say? Like you show me what's possible, universe, and I'm all in. I am all in because like I knew something different was available. And I knew that I was ready to make some changes in my life. And
Yeah.
it actually, doesn't always show up the way you think it is, but from that demand, I followed the energy, because some jobs showed up, the first job that showed up that kind of followed the energy. I was only making like 12, $15 an hour. And I was like, yeah, okay, like this doesn't actually match the energy of that demand, but I knew there was something with that. But with that job that I took, I ended up meeting someone with a corporate office that were like, they met me and they're like, how can we hire you? We love you. Like, what would it take? And then I went from, doing that to like billing, like creating things that I had no even idea how, but to like 50,000 a month. And I can get now that I can look back at like, because people are like, well, how do you create that? How did you get here? And I was like, how did I get here? Well, because I made a demand of me. I don't know what it's going to take. I don't know what it's going to look like, but this isn't working and I'm changing this. And I end up creating something that was completely different than I would have ever imagined because I was working doing things that I didn't even know I could do.
Uh-huh.
I had no idea.
Well, and how often does that show up too? Like, how many of you have had those moments where you look at your life? Like, if you, like, I look at what I do for a living, and I will honestly tell you, if you ever looked at me and said, "Are you making money doing that?" I'd say you're crazy.
Mm.
Like 5 years ago, I would not imagine I'd be a therapist. I wouldn't imagine that I would be an access conscious facilitator. I would like one of the jobs I do with access is
Traveling the
oracle.
world.
Yeah,
Yeah.
traveling, and I do
Mhm.
oracling, which is listening and typing. If you would have told me I had the ability to be present enough to hear and type fast and create manual content and whatever for a big giant fucking company, uh, how do you compute that? How do you figure out how to do that? You don't. You just go and you follow it and you ask. Like for me, I knew I made a demand when I found access consciousness. Like, for example, I knew what I could create as a future with access. And this isn't about access, this is about me. But I
Mhm.
knew what I could create with regards to access. And I asked for it and it started to show up. But I'm not doing what I would like if you would have asked me, oh, what do you want to do? What I'm doing is not what I would have said at all.
Yeah.
So it's like, where can you have that in your world that even goes beyond like wherever you are right now? Like, what if what you're currently demanding is a very small amount of what you're actually desiring? Like, how many of you look at this one tiny thing that isn't working and you want to change this one thing, but it's like, well, don't even look at this over here. It's just this one thing, universe. I just want to change this one thing. But what if, hypothetically speaking, this one thing that you want to change will not change without some difference over here in this other thing you don't want to look at? And that's where, again, from yesterday's piece on getting clear comes in, is you have to look at everything that's going on and everything that's in place. And
Mhm.
it's whatever it takes, no matter what it looks like, no matter what you have to lose, no matter what needs to change. You, this is where it's a demand of yourself. You have to be willing to actually ask for the change that you're saying that you desire.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
again, if it isn't changing, what is it that you're actually asking for? And like Becky had asked at the very end yesterday, like, is if you're looking towards to the future and what you're asking for, is what you're asking for big enough? Because a lot of times too, you actually reach what you think you're asking for and you don't recognize it Like, again, money is one thing people look at, but they look at numbers in bank accounts.
Mhm.
So like if you say you want to make 100K in a year, you have to actually look at all of the places in which money shows up, which includes gifts and like things you get for free, things you get from value that you don't have to pay for, like the $5 bill you randomly found on the side of the street.
Yeah.
Also, look at how many businesses you're in. How many of those businesses are making money? And what part of you creating with it created that money? And it's not in your bank account, but you did create that amount of money.
Mm.
So this is also that the other part of having your ask be big enough is, what if what you've already asked for it, you have?
Yeah.
What if you increased it?
That's like what you just talked about, is the fifth piece is the contribution.
Mhm.
Because the contribution, and I actually asked you this recently because I was like, what is actually contribution? And what did you tell me, John?
Contribution is gifting and receiving simultaneously.
That. So
And
it's not like a lot of people think, if you think contribution is like, let me gift and give everything I have to everybody else, like in the world, but that's not it.
no. And I even had someone correct me too, because I said, we look at what we can gift to people, but it's not just gifting, it's receiving. And someone said, it's not a but, it's an
Mm,
and.
yeah.
It's simultaneous. It's not, oh, well, like, I give a session and I get a session, or I did this nice thing for you, so now I get this in return. That's not contribution. That's something totally different.
Yeah.
Contribution is like the gratitude and the level of energy that you get to receive in gifting to people. Like, or vice versa. Like someone gives you a gift and you
Mhm.
truly receive it and you're truly grateful for what they give you.
Yeah.
It changes their world. That's a contribution. You're receiving the gift and you're gifting them gratitude. And then when they really receive it, guess what creates in your world? Also gratitude
Yeah.
or joy, or like these different elements that can show up. But it's not just gifting. Everyone looks at contribution like what you can do for another person, or what you can give, or what you're going to change, or what you're going to like. It's always outward. But how many things, when you make a demand, do you actually allow things to come into your world?
Mm, that's a great question.
What if you did?
What if you did? Well, so let's go over this again, just quickly, because we did it kind of quick, just to summarize everything that we talked about, just quickly. So the main elements are, the first one is demand of yourself. Like, no matter what it takes, I'm changing this. Like, no matter what it takes. And the great thing about that, like we said, you don't have to figure that out. You're just like, I'm changing this. You make the demand of yourself. If you're on here and everything in your world's great, wonderful, keep it. You're fine. If you're like, I know there's something else, you demand it of yourself. And no matter what it takes, I'm changing this. Number two, question. What choices do I have here? Like right now, like what choices do I have here? Right? And then number three is choice. If I choose this, what will it create? Like if I choose this, what will my future look like in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Like if I don't choose this, what will it look like? Right? Because you have choice. Number four is possibilities. What else is possible here? Because like we tend to be like, oh, this is all I can receive. This is as good as it gets. No. Number four is what are the possibilities and how does it get better? Like what else now is possible here? And then number five, like what John just talked about, is contribution. What contribution can I be and receive? So this is a lot. And I would really love for you guys to play with this and like take these 5 questions, we'll give them to you, and then apply them to your life. Ask them for everything and look what comes up, maybe for the next even 5 days, 30 days, 20 days.
Yeah.
And like, what is your demand? And are you ready to change? Or is whatever you're doing, actually, if you complain about it or don't complain about it, is it working for you? because you're not wrong. Like you actually don't have to, you don't have to change anything,
Right.
right?
It's so funny when you say that too, because I could just feel where I'm like, ah. So for any of you out there, when we say that, where you're like, but the right thing to do is to change. What if there's no right or wrong in what you choose? You're just choosing.
Yeah.
Like wherever you are right now is where you are, and you're not wrong for wherever you are.
Yes.
Your life is exactly how you'd like it to be, and like in the sense of you have what you have. So if you'd like more, then you have to make a demand to have more. And
Yeah.
if you're fine with what you have, be fine with it and enjoy the hell out of it.
Hell yeah. And acknowledge it. Man, I created this. Man, I created crap. Or man, like I created some
Yeah,
shit.
acknowledge all of your
Yeah.
creations. I once had I was going to write a funny book about anti-norms and things that, go against what's normal. Like, for example, flushing the toilet.
Hmm.
And so the anti-normal version of that would be don't flush when you're finished.
Oh,
And, I was going to write a whole little section in a book based off that and call it acknowledge all of your creations, including the crap. So next time, like, there's a fun thing for those of you who don't get grossed out. This is a very weird thing. And now I'm like, I may do it. How many of you would even be willing to look in a toilet and be like, wow, that's an amazing pile of crap I did there?
Hmm.
Which could be a very big metaphor for your life. I'm
All
just
of
saying.
it.
Now I'm just getting inappropriate, and you can tell this thing's probably at the time. But one last thing to just, mess with your heads a little bit. Maybe
Yeah,
gross you
well,
out.
it's funny
Fine.
because actually, like you acknowledge that piece, but it's funny, but how much do we look at everything as a creation in our life? And like everything, you're like, oh, I created that. Nice. Yeah. If you want to do the toilet, great. Or like, but like everything you do, oh, this food I created, oh, this car I created, oh the relationship or non-relationship you created, this body I created. And so it really acknowledged everything that you have created. And then look at like, what is your demand?
Yeah.
And come back tomorrow for day 3. And what is day 3, John? Do you know?
I don't. I was just gonna say that she has to say, "What the hell is day? What are we talking? What are we talking about?" I think you wrote down.
Let's not tell them.
That's fine. I'm like,
Come
what
back. Come back tomorrow and you will find out what day 3 is
Come
about.
back tomorrow, and we will all, including myself, find out what we're talking.
I know. I definitely know because I love this. This is so much fun for me. And I never got like how much fun it is. And even the creating the crap is fun. So like getting clear on the crap you've created, making the demand, and then we'll see what day 3 is. So thanks, John. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming in here.